Hi. How are you?
Okay, we are. Okay, good evening. The time is 6:10. It's Thursday, June 4th. We're in the Yonkers Riverfront Library, the community room, for the second public hearing for the Westchester Rent Guidelines Board. Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. My name is Elsa Ruben. I'm the chair of the Westchester Rent Guidelines, and I welcome you to this second public hearing to consider comments and testimony concerning adjustments for rent or leases for apartments subject to the Emergency Tenant Protection Act of 1974. These leases are being renewed or commencing between October 1st, 2026 and September 30th, 2027. I will now ask our counsel, Mr. Peter Stucker, to make any announcements for tonight.
Okay, so I guess the only announcements that I really have is there's a third public hearing next Thursday, the 11th, at 7 p.m. in the Mount Vernon City Hall. This is a thin group tonight. You don't need a quorum to hold a public hearing. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed, so the other members have been given that link. Hopefully they will avail themselves of it. And the other item is, as we talked at the scheduling meeting, this room has a 2-hour limit on it, so the public hearing does have to end at 8 o'clock. Hopefully, if people are unable to, get their speaking in before then, they can come to the Mount Vernon meeting. But I will stop talking so that people can start speaking.
Right. Do we have any news about Mr. Finger?
Mr. Finger was sent the link to join. He has not joined as of yet. So when he does, he'll be visible on the screen and he'll be able to participate.
Okay, and I'm going to let my colleague, public member here introduce himself.
Gregory Smith.
Public member.
Public member.
Okay,
I think the chair has it. Oh, I think it's at the, there's a table over there that has it right at the entrance.
Did you get the list?
Any chance you can go get it?
Oh, that's
Thanks. It's at the entrance to the room.
When you sign your name, please write clearly so that I can read the names.
Actually, we should just bring it up now and then people can sign up as they come up to speak. Yeah, we'll just give it to the chair so she can call up the names.
So before I start calling names, I'm going to go through the rules and procedures for those testifying before this board. If you wish to address the board and you have not signed in advance, please sign in the back there. There's a list. Individuals will get 3 minutes to do their presentation, and people representing organizations or entities will have 5 minutes.
Here's one.
And Mr. Steger will take track of the time.
Sure.
And please, I'm going to ask very emphatically to, when the alarm sounds, please try to wrap up your presentation, especially because tonight we have a deadline at 8 o'clock. We have to be out of here. So I will kindly ask everybody to be as brief as possible. Did you sign already? I didn't. No. Are
There
you?
were a few people who were waiting to still sign, but they brought the sheet to you, so we
Okay,
can start
You-
calling. Is there another piece of paper?
No, no, you can do it here, because I'm gonna call for here. Go ahead.
You should definitely put out another piece of paper.
Yeah.
And just-
Alex, Jennifer, for Alex, Laura, people.
My apologies, Peter.
You do.
Hey, no problem, Mother.
I saw it and I did, but I'm-
Yeah, I did sign up to be, but I do,
And you are,
a landlord. Yes. Thank you.
Traffic.
And parking.
Parking's not bad, traffic.
Thank you.
It's German.
All right, I'm going to,
Please begin. Signing somewhere.
I'm gonna start by calling Mr. Jim Paul. He's not here.
He's coming.
Okay. Hi, Camille. Larry. Will you represent yourself or an entity?
I represent myself and my family.
And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for your time. My name is Kyle Camilleri. I'm representing myself and my family. My family's owned a 6-unit apartment building in Tarrytown, New York, since my great grandfather bought it in the 1930s.
Is the microphone on?
No.
No, there's a switch. Yeah.
You have to start from the
I
beginning.
reclaim my
You
time.
will, yeah, have your
Can you,
time.
is that better? Is that better? That's
Yeah.
better. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. My family's owned a 6-unit apartment building in Tarrytown, New York, since my great grandfather bought it in the 1930s. The building is now controlled by ETPA, and 100% of the units are subject to rent stabilization. This is the only building we own, and it's never been a business for us. This has been our family home for 4 generations. My grandfather was raised by his parents here and has lived here his whole life. My dad grew up here, and now I live in the apartment next to my grandparents, helping to take care of them and the building. They're in their 90s, and the building is over 100 years old. Since stepping in to help run the building and its finances, I've become acutely aware of the growing possibility of losing the place that 4 generations of my family have lived in. The condition of our building and our ability to make the necessary improvements depends largely on whether rental income can keep pace with rising costs. From 22 to 2025, our insurance costs rose 45%. Our oil prices also continue to decline, up 16% for the same period, but on average, we're up 48% year over year for Lower Hudson as of May 25th, 2026. I have those stats here from the New York Department of Environmental Research. Our real estate taxes are also increasing in Tarrytown, up 6% year over year. In addition to these rising costs, the building needs ongoing repairs and major CapEx. There are 3 major CapEx projects we want to complete to enhance the building for our tenants. 1, replacing the siding, which is over 50 years old. 2, replacing the roof, which is nearing the end of its useful life. And 3, replacing the single pane windows original to the construction of the building. It's really a nuisance to live with 125-year-old windows. My grandparents don't even try to open them. I have here a quote from a local contractor based in Tarrytown. Total estimated costs for these projects would be almost $350,000. The net income of our building last year, after all expenses were paid, was only $7,000. That works out to just over $1,100 an apartment for the entire year. At that rate, the $350,000 investment would take 50 years to get our money back, not including any interest on a loan for the construction, which would be a lot. Simply put, the numbers do not work. Knowing now the extent of the constraints forced upon us by the ETPA, no path to deregulation of any of the units, no mark to market on vacancies, heavily restricted improvement allowances, and rent increases below inflation or even zero, we are stuck and we are relying solely on the rent increases this board passes to keep our home afloat. We are asking this board for a meaningful increase. We're not asking for increases to generate excessive profits, but to be able to maintain our building and be the kind of landlord our tenants deserve. Thank you.
Any questions?
What do you think will you do?
I mean, we could look at the report just released by HCR that states costs year over year up 4.25%. I think that would be a start, keeping up with the costs. Because that's where we're able to cover the inflation of costs. Inflation of rent.
I have a question. You said it's yourself and your grandparents, I assume your family, and how many tenants actually inside your family live in the building?
4. There's 2 units on the first floor, me and my grandparents,
Okay.
and then
How long have those tenants been there?
one has been there since the 1970s. She's paying $750. And the rest have been there 30 years because the parents passed it down to the child.
She inherited.
She inherited it from her mom. And then another one was like 10 years and one we just put in there last.
You have a good relationship with the tenants?
Yeah, they're all great. I mean, they're our neighbors, so we keep good relationships with them. We help out as much as we can, we do whatever they ask and yeah. So,
Do you talk to them about some of the work that needs to be done on the buildings? Does that ever come up?
not really.
Do they complain about it?
They don't.
No.
I think they understand that they're in a good position. For market rents, and they bother us.
They understand what they have.
They understand what they have, and they don't want to push.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next person in my list is Alana Shubitelli.
Is it okay to temporarily just go out? Is it okay?
Oh, okay, yeah, I've told you before.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Apologies, I'm sure everyone's aware of the traffic right now.
Yes.
So I'm speaking on behalf of the organization.
5 minutes.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you again for your service and your willingness to hear all sides of what is a much more complicated question than it seems. The BRI represents many of the property owners that you'll hear from tonight, but we also represent a wide range of members across the real estate spectrum in Westchester County, including builders and operators of state subsidized affordable housing, as well as co-op and condo associations and property managing agents. So we have a very broad perspective as to how much it costs to either build or operate housing in Westchester County at a variety of price points. What you heard last Thursday from the experts in fuel, insurance, and financing is pretty much the story across the board. And of course, what's been going on with the surge in Con Edison rates and the backlash to that has been front page news for most of the last year. So when we looked at the reports that HCR provided on the cost surveys, it does not at all surprise us that expense categories that have seen the biggest increases are insurance, oil, utilities, and interest rates. By the way, the reported oil cost is from 2025 when the Strait of Hormuz was open the whole year. So Lord only knows what's coming for us this fall and winter. These increased costs aren't specific at all to rent stabilization. We're seeing the same increases for an affordable housing complex built in the 2000s, a co-op built in the 1980s, and for rent stabilized buildings, each of which was built before 1974. The bottom line in black and white from the data provided by HCR shows that costs for these properties went up 4.2%, excluding depreciation. So look, everyone agrees that we do not have enough affordable housing in the county. Period, full stop. And we have been one of the leading organizations advocating for building more housing, particularly affordable housing throughout the county. We've worked in coalition with others at the state level on policies like the Housing Access Voucher Program to stabilize tenants at risk of eviction. And at the county level, we continue to promote the Office of the Housing Council. And when the Trump administration announced they were gutting the Continuum of Care program that provides long-term supportive housing to formerly homeless residents, we worked tirelessly with advocates to get that funding restored. Guess what? They're coming for it again, and we'll be prepared to fight for it again. When we hear the call from allies, advocates, and providers to address root causes of housing costs, we always stand with them. But this tends to be the one room where we stand alone and are treated differently. There have been many bills in Albany to address surging insurance for apartment buildings and to prevent insurance discrimination based on renting to low-income tenants. They're great and we support them, but so far they have all excluded rent-stabilized properties. Westchester County is a great program, LTAP, designed to finance repairs for financially distressed properties. That's great, we support that too, but so far none of that money has gone to rent-stabilized properties. When HUD calculated the fair market rents for the New York metro region based on increased costs, every apartment size from studio to 2-bedroom went up 5 to 6% this year. But we know we're not getting that, let alone the high increases allowable under good cause eviction that the New Rochelle tenants were talking about. Most years, we center our ask on the rate of inflation as a reasonable empirical benchmark, but the inflation number is now up to 4.6%, which hurts tenants and owners and is already being felt by anyone who's buying groceries or filling up the gas tank. So we're not asking for that either. All we're asking is to hold the line. Property taxes, labor, insurance, debt, interest rates, oil, electricity, we don't get to negotiate those away. We don't get to pay less or ignore what the true cost is because it doesn't feel reasonable or fair. The only thing that is optional, if rent increases do not keep pace with expense increases, are the investments, improvements, and repairs to keep the housing dignified and worthy of being called a home. If water's coming in, you can't afford to redo the roof, you patch it. But the tenant who finds water in her apartment 6 months later is not going to like that trade-off. If you can't replace an elevator that is years past its prime, you patch it. But when it breaks down next month all over again, the tenants who rely on it to get their groceries home or deal with mobility challenges aren't going to like that trade-off. If you can't afford to renovate a vacant apartment that's been occupied for 20 years, but only renting at $900 a month, you paint the walls and hope for the best, but that tenant is getting a very cheap apartment that feels very shabby. The money to fix all of this has to come from somewhere. And if it doesn't, tenants and owners alike lose. We're not going to solve all of our housing or poverty issues in this room, but I urge you to at least help us hold the line and not sink further into the hole. The reports from HCR say that the cost of running these buildings went up 4.2%. We're asking you to take that number and match it for a 1-year lease, well below the rate of inflation and the HUD calculated fair market benchmark. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Polly?
Yeah, a few. You didn't mention fair market rent numbers as it compared to ETPA units. Do you have any information on that?
Yes, so I pulled this off the county's website before I got here. So fair market rent is what HUD uses as its benchmark for figuring out vouchers and other rental assistance programs. And the 2026 numbers, well, let's start with what rent stabilized is. So as you saw from your report, the average monthly legal rent is $1,676. By comparison, the 2026 FMR for Westchester as published by HUD is $25.29 for a studio, $26.55 for a 1-bedroom, and $29.10 for a 2-bedroom. Those two lines have sort of been going like this because generally speaking, HUD increases based on cost and they also increase based on wage increases and a host of different factors. Rent stabilization is only based on what the income increases that are granted by this board each year. And we know that they've been under inflation. So they're sort of trending in two different directions. But right now, if you're just talking 1-bedroom, it's about $1,000 less comparing the average legal rent to what a FMR is for 1-bedroom.
My second question is about the NYU Furman report that came out in regards to buildings that are 90% or more ETPA being in more distress than others. Do you have any information in regards to that?
Yeah, so the Furman report actually had a whole day symposium where they released a report, and what they were specifically looking at was the different bands of rent stabilization within New York City, because NYC has a lot of different data on this. Some of those bands don't actually exist here. A lot of newer buildings get put into rent stabilization in New York City, whereas here we only have the old buildings, the pre-1974. But the comparable thing is we have a number of buildings that are sort of wall-to-wall rent stabilized, and NYU Furman looks specifically at those that sort of met that definition, but they're not cross-subsidized by a market rate, which much higher rents goes to help subsidize the low rents of rent stabilization. And one of the big things that they found was that generally speaking, they were more likely to be financially distressed. In New York City, they were more likely to be in the outer boroughs. That kind of makes sense. But also that they were now facing a whole range of problems post the changes in HSTPA, which I know you guys all know about, and I don't mean to belabor, but one of the things that they specifically found was that investments in those properties was way, way down as rental increases were constrained. The number of code violations, for example, in those buildings was increasing at more than twice the rate on the rest of the rent stabilized properties within New York City, and so on and so forth. And again, we don't have anything like that information for that breakdown for those wall-to-wall buildings here. It would be great if we could see it someday, or if either HCR or some outside entity could run that report, but it sort of tracks with what our lived-in experience on the ground is.
Thank you. I know we don't have the numbers for the ICIs. I'm sorry, the
MCI
MCI and
It's alphabet.
IAIs.
Yeah.
I know we don't have those numbers for 2005. The 2000, do you have any, 2006, do you have any information in regards to the 2005?
So I know in the past we've looked at that. So before HSTPA, we would average like 50 to 60 MCIs per year. The last number that we had was 2024, and I think it was part of the stats package that you got last year. I don't know why it wasn't this year. At that point, we had 5. And part of the reason for that, we think, based on the reports that we've done in the past, is that they changed the financial formulas. So it kind of works for a very, very big building where you can defray the cost of the expenses across a number of different apartments, but it doesn't really work for a smaller building where you have fewer that financially, where you have fewer apartments. So you can sort of spread the cost at the very reduced rates post HSTPA. And as you know, we have more of those small to mid-sized buildings than the New York City population does. In fact, most of the ETBA housing stock is 35 or below. So that sort of tracks. It's harder for them to finance those. The new formulas don't really work for the MCI, so that's really fallen off the cliff. We haven't seen the numbers on the IIs. Those appear to be relatively stable the last time we saw them. But again, I think here in Westchester, we see fewer of them than they see in New York City and elsewhere, based on the report that came out of HCR last year. I haven't seen this year's yet. It would be great to see.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Thank you.
Before I continue, I want to acknowledge that Mr. Withers is here and Mr. Mara Stewart is here. Okay, wait, let's show. It's your turn.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Alana Chivatelli and I represent the Apartment Building Advisory Council. I'm the chair.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Chairwoman and members of the Westchester County Rent Guidelines Board. My name is Alana Chivatelli and I'm a small property owner in Yonkers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm not a large institutional owner. I own and operate an 18-unit at 31 Faro Street in Yonkers. I'm personally responsible for every major decision affecting that property. At the last hearing, much of the discussion focused on broad housing affordability concerns and issues beyond the scope of rent-stabilized housing. While those concerns are important, the responsibility of this board is to examine the financial realities facing rent-stabilized properties and determine an adjustment that reflects the actual costs of operating and maintaining those buildings. Those costs have risen dramatically. Let me share one example from my building. My previous mortgage was approximately $2.1 million with an interest rate of 3.5%. When the loan matured this year, the entire principal balance became due and required refinancing. In an effort to preserve cash flow and continue operating the building responsibly, I refinanced into a 3-year interest-only loan at 6.5%. In practical terms, my borrowing costs nearly doubled overnight. Insurance costs have also become increasingly unsustainable. While my property general insurance increased approximately 9% this year, the most significant increase occurred in my umbrella coverage. In 2023, my umbrella policy cost approximately $7,600 annually. In 2024, it increased to nearly $9,900. This year, with no claims, the renewal quote, same coverage, $27,000. To put that in perspective, between 2015 and 2020, this same coverage generally costs less than $3,000 annually. These increases are not unique to my property. Property owners throughout Westchester are facing the same pressures. But the real issue is not simply that expenses have increased. The real issue is what happens when those increases leave fewer resources available to reinvest in the buildings themselves. At 31 Faro Street, I've never filed for an MCI. Not because there aren't improvements that need to be made, but because the economics simply do not support the investment. The boiler is original. The roof has been patched more times than I can count. The hallways are largely original. Sidewalk repairs have been limited to patchwork fixes, and the intercom system is original as well. My tenants deserve better than an original boiler, a roof that's been patched repeatedly over the years, and an aging intercom system that should have been replaced long ago. I want to make those investments. I want to modernize the building, improve building systems, and provide the kind of upgrades that the residents deserve. But every dollar consumed by rising mortgage costs, insurance premiums, taxes, utilities, labor, and maintenance is a dollar that cannot be invested back into the property. The longer these projects are deferred, the more expensive they become, and the greater the risk that routine maintenance turns into major repairs. When people talk about preserving housing, we should remember that preserving housing means preserving the buildings themselves. One thing that should concern this board is that fewer owners are making major investments in their buildings. When capital improvement activity declines, it's often a sign that owners are struggling to make the numbers work. Deferred investment may not be visible immediately, but over time it shows up in aging systems, postponed upgrades, and gradual deterioration of the housing stock. That deterioration directly affects tenants. Tenants are the ones who live in aging systems, outdated infrastructure, and repairs that are postponed because the resources simply are not there. If rent-stabilized buildings are not generating enough revenue to support ongoing reinvestment, the quality of housing inevitably suffers. Mortgage expenses up, insurance expenses up, labor costs up, materials and maintenance costs are up, utilities remain high, they're up. Meanwhile, rent-stabilized revenue does not automatically adjust to reflect these realities. The result is a growing gap between the cost of operating housing and the revenue available to support that housing. I also want to be clear about my ask. I recognize that my tenants are facing financial challenges of their own, and my goal is not to place additional burdens on the residents who call my building their home. But the reality is that the cost of operating rent-stabilized housing continues to rise. According to the surveys done this year before this board, those costs increased by approximately 4.2% over the past year. I'm not asking for an arbitrary increase. I'm asking the board to follow the data and adopt a 1-year renewal adjustment of 4.2%. Which reflects the actual increases in costs of operating rent-stabilized housing. That adjustment will not solve every challenge facing owners, nor will it immediately fund every needed improvement in my building, but it will help narrow the gap between rising expenses and rental income and give owners a more realistic ability to maintain, preserve, and improve their properties. I respectfully urge the board to focus on the financial evidence before you and on the long-term condition of Westchester's rent-stabilized housing stock. The goal should not simply be to keep buildings operating today, but to ensure that owners have the ability to maintain, improve, and preserve their properties for years to come. Without sufficient revenue to support ongoing maintenance and capital investment, the quality of Westchester's housing stock will become deteriorated. The outcome serves neither owners nor tenants. Ultimately, preserving affordable housing requires preserving the buildings themselves. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great timing.
Got a question?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I understood this correctly. Your insurance cost went from $7,000 to $24,000?
No, that's only one part of my insurance cost. My building insurance cost went up 9% so my umbrella policy, which is an additional insurance that I'm required to have, was at $7,600 in 2023. Last year, $27,000 in 1 year with no claims. And that's the umbrella policy for the same limits, same everything. And this is because of the scaffold law in New York State.
Yeah. question, this is a personal question, so you can defer not to answer it. You have to be put in a position sometimes to take personally the difference.
Yes. 100%.
You,
My tenants deserve a standard.
and you've taken your actual savings, your personal savings and invested.
It's in the building. I'm not taking anything.
No, I.
Yeah, it's
I
the
don't think there's
tenants,
a lot to take.
there isn't.
All right.
The math's not there. When you go from a 3.53 interest rate in a mortgage and to keep it float, a 3-year interest, I've never heard of a 3-year interest only. But we're trying to make it work as responsible property owners. And now I'm at 6.50. And I gotta refinance that in 2 years. Lord hopes the mortgage rate comes to some stability, but it's not looking like that.
In real lips to God's.
I agree.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you so very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Well presented. Do you currently have any vacant units in your building?
No, sir, we don't.
If you were to be granted the 4.2%, where would, maybe, I'm not asking you have to say, where would you think you would place that increase? What would be the first thing you would do?
The-
4.2%.
If we were, that's just gonna keep me operating. It's not placing it somewhere, sir. That's just,
It's
the
not-
4.2% is the cost based on your surveys of what it costs to run them year over year from last year to this year. So
So it would have the operating costs like your insurance, etc. I'm talking about building repairs, capital.
where there, that is part of the building repairs. That's all in there. That's what it costs. That's what your surveys, the surveys that we submitted to this board say. It costs 4.2% in increases in expenses. That's what we paid. So that's all we're asking for.
So in that 4.2%, you would be including insurance, maintenance,
All of it.
everything.
That's your math.
So on your savings.
Right, well, but also, I would rather take the money out of my savings account and put it into the things that I'm talking about doing. Because as you know, with HSTPA, there no longer is I've never filed an MCI in this building, the math's not there. I want the tenants to get what they deserve. They deserve it. They're good people. But these laws were not made for good people.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Since you said 4.2% for 1 year, what you would recommend for 2?
I'm gonna defer on the 2-year because I want to wait and hear what the rest of the evidence is presented to this board. So we're deferring at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Renee Williams. Did I pronounce your name?
It's fine.
Can you repeat your name?
Hello, my name is Sinead Williams. Okay, the mic works. Let me back up, I'm loud. Sinead Williams, SHANAE. I am a county legislator. I represent this district, District 16 in the city of Yonkers. And I'm also the majority whip at the County Board of Legislators. I'm here, I think myself and my colleague legislator Ulai are probably the only 2 folks in the room that are not landlords or representing landlords. I'm here on behalf of the residents who are living in the ETPA rent stabilized units here in not just my district, but throughout Westchester. And I'm also here on behalf of several of my colleagues, legislator Terry Clemens, vice chair of the board, minority leader Margaret Kunzio, legislator Colin Smith, Erica Pierce, Jen Puja, Nancy Barr, Anant Nambiar, Jewel Williams Johnson, David Imamura, David Subiolo, Tyree Woodson Samuels, and Jose Alvarado. And obviously you'll hear from legislator Ulaya in a little bit. So I hear everything that has been said before, and I don't dispute their concerns or frustrations with the way with the conditions of the properties of landlords who have rent stabilized units. I understand the need for capital funds so that they can improve the apartments so that the tenants can live in a good, beautiful home. Everyone deserves to live in good conditions. However, we are living in a time where everything is extremely, extremely expensive. Just last year, and we continue to fight Con Edison, but just last year, the board sued Con Edison for their rent rates that they were looking to increase from 13 and 11, up to 13 and 11% for gas and electricity. And we were successfully able to get them down, not as low as we wanted, but we settled at like 5% and 7%. And even that is still too much, right? That's just one bit of something that we can point to show how expensive utilities are, right? Rent, market rate rent, luxury rents, forget about it. Like, I can't even go there. I live in a studio and I'm paying, I don't know, it's embarrassing. I'm not even gonna talk about it, okay? But the market rate studios alone, it's ridiculous what we're paying market rate. And so I have to think about these residents who are in rent stabilized units because we have to protect them. Like, there's no reason for us to add more than they can bear in addition to not being able to buy groceries, in addition to gas prices, right? I believe Tim spoke about fuel earlier, like everything is already so high. I think this is not the time for us to say, let's go crazy and bring the rent stabilized units up to whatever inflation is, because inflation is ridiculous. And that's not a good comparison. What I do think is that I understand that we also, have to do some kind of increase. And so I'm here today to ask on behalf of my colleagues and myself, and behalf of the tenants who aren't here today because they're probably at work, they're probably working 2-3 jobs just to make ends meet, and it's still not enough. And so I'm here to ask for no more than 2% increase for the next year, for 26-27 year. I wrote something down here earlier. I'm sorry, I don't want to take up too much time, but I do know you have to leave here by 8. But I think something was mentioned about the HUD rents earlier, and what those numbers were. And I just want to caution us not to throw numbers out about what those HUD bedrooms are at, like 2,500 for a 1-bedroom or so on and so forth, because HUD literally, it's based on the area median income. So whatever that 2,500 for a 1-bedroom might have been, it could have been at the 100% area median income, right? Which is much higher for Westchester County than someone who, is at the 60% area median income. So we have to be mindful of that. And then also I want to just say that no one is going to fight harder for landlords who are owners of rent stabilized units and buildings than I will when time comes in December, from September to October, for us to do our county budget, because I do fully understand that the need to invest in your properties and to do the proper upkeep for each unit is important and necessary. And the capital funds are just not there. I understand that there's insurance increases for land. I understand all of it because I've met with many of the landlords in this room, and I fully understand it. And so I will do everything I can to fight for funding so that we can help landlords cover those capital costs, because we know it's necessary. But putting the rent anything over 2% on these tenants is not going to get you enough money to cover the capital projects that you need done anyway, and it doesn't help anyone. So I just think it's really important for everyone here in the room to understand that you do have someone here who cares and understand. I will fight and work with the county executive, my colleagues, to advocate for funding specifically so that you guys can have the opportunity to make those capital improvements in your buildings. So with that being said, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for giving me the time to speak, and I have nothing more to say.
Thank you. Can you please stay there?
Yes, questions? The hot seat, all right.
No, you don't get.
We don't get
No, the audience is not allowed to ask questions.
Does anybody else?
Yeah, do you want to ask a question? No?
I just wanted to say thank you.
Mr. Nelson, don't ask questions right now. We could talk later. Okay, we don't.
Yeah, I actually have a question and a couple of comments. First of all, I was struck by the lack of tenants here tonight. And, you know, I get it, you know,
There's a lot of
and a
reasons
lot,
for that.
I know a
Absolutely.
lot of people who are working 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 jobs myself.
It's more than that. It's also just getting the word out. There's a lot of different issues,
Okay,
but
but it's an important
Yeah.
subject, and quite frankly, I don't see a lot of tenants here. So, but I do see a lot of landlords, which just sort of put things in perspective. The second thing, and all due respect,
Mhm.
I know you're doing your job and trying to do your job. I think you're trying to kick the can down the street. Yeah, you are.
Agree to
Because you know
disagree.
what? The bottom line is, we don't need an increase in the fall. We need an increase, or for next year, we need an increase now because of a lot of the testimonies that you'll hear and see. So I don't think, and we're not asking for greater inflation. We're asking for less.
someone
I'm
who
not-
spoke before
Excuse me,
mentioned
I
that.
just
Sure.
And the fact is, we're asking for below that number. And I think it's a little rich, given the fact that the County Board of Legislatures just passed the 3.7 tax increase in the county. And you're telling us,
He's talking, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying, and I think it's, you know, that's a tax increase. And that's across the board, people who pay taxes, we're asking for 4.2%. And, or at least that number's been thrown out, so. I don't, you know, I don't understand the rationale.
Is that a question or is it a comment or am I responding to that?
Yeah.
So, you know, I hear you and like I said, I heard everything that everyone here said and I saw the documents from HCR that was submitted. I got those emails. I fully understand. Again, raising rents on tenants who are making 30,000 a year, 50,000 a year by anything more than 2% is not going to help the situation. It is not going to help the landlords and it's going to add a burden to those tenants. Okay, the last thing that I want to see happen is more people being pushed out of their homes and on the street and homeless and have to come to our shelters, which are at capacity already. And it's going to be a cycle that is just going to get out of control. So what I'm saying is, yes, I do think that you guys should make an increase, but more than 2% is just unacceptable. And also what I am saying is,
So that's not.
and what I am saying is, yes, we raised taxes last year. We did, yeah, we did. And like my colleague said, after 8 years of zero property tax increases, and that might have worked for the previous administration, but we are trying to be reasonable and fiscally responsible in the work that we do at the County Board of Legislators. So I'm sorry that it doesn't make sense to you, but I do understand that what the landlords here are asking for is funding so that they can improve their buildings. And getting, you know, a 4% increase is not going to get them the money that they need. A 4.2%, whatever.
Times the amount of units on an
Okay,
annual basis.
okay,
Yes, it does.
it's not going to get them the amount of funding that they need.
She said herself she
To,
wouldn't.
to fix the boilers
It's gonna
and to do,
It's
it's,
gonna help.
you know what, 2% will also help. It will. And what will also help is the $10 million that we've put into last year's budget. Since you brought up the county budget, we did put funding in that budget specifically to help with those capital projects. It's taking some time to get that plan to roll out, but it's going to happen. And in addition to that, like I said, I will personally be in those rooms fighting and advocating for more funding, not to kick the can down the road, because I don't plan on being down the road later to say, okay, let's keep going. I want to get things done while I'm there now, right? And so I'm going to fight like hell this year and every chance that I get in those rooms to make sure that the way that we protect our tenants includes the conditions that they're living in. So we're gonna fight for the funding so that they can have those capital improvements.
Same way we're gonna try to protect our landlords.
And that's
Or,
fine.
by the way, protecting their tenants.
Okay, so we all want the same thing. What
Yeah,
are
we
we
do.
talking about?
We do, but we can't do it at 2%.
Okay, well, you know what? The tenants cannot afford more than 2%.
I'd love to hear that from some tenants.
Well, maybe what would help, because I tried to get, information to the tenants, maybe what would help is if the landlords would put up notices about this meeting, just like how they're here, have their tenants come and speak. One gentleman came up here and said that he never spoke with his very nice neighbors and tenants that he have about the needs that to improve his house with him and his grandmother or whatever it was. Why not? Why aren't you having those conversations since they're your neighbors? You're saying that they're not coming to you and advocating?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're the landlord. If you see that there's something wrong in their apartment, why wouldn't you say, hey, I need your help to fix this unit? What can you do financially to help me fix it? And there might be some tenants who have the skills, maybe not in his case, but there might be tenants who have the skills to fix up their units themselves or get the funding to do it so it's not on the backs of the landlord. My sister lived in an apartment where she did all of the renovations and the landlord was perfectly fine and aware of it and everything was fine. And they worked together on that. There are situations where that can happen. But if the conversation is not even happening to begin with, what are we talking
The
about?
only tenants that I have heard from are from tenants who don't live in ETPA apartments. So far, this is the second hearing, and I haven't heard yet from a tenant who lives in an ETPA apartment.
I have a
And I
question.
hope we do.
I hope we do too.
Yeah.
I hope we do too, but it starts with getting notices out, and that has been a struggle because one thing that the state would not do when I asked for the information of all those because we know that there are buildings where not every apartment is a rent stabilized apartment. So sending out mailers from my office to every one of those units doesn't make sense. So I tried to get the specific units from the state to say, hey, let me notify these, because a lot of them might not even, they have no clue that this is happening. No clue. And no one is telling them, and the problem is getting the information out. And if the landlords who have access, who are sending them their rent, can send them the information about this meeting, I bet you they'll show up. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I have a question for you. You are recommending on behalf of other legislators.
Yes, 14 legislators have signed this letter and I can give it. I read the names earlier, but I will read it again. Myself, Legislator Terry Clemens, Minority Leader Margaret Kunzio, Legislator Erica Pierce, Nancy Barr, Jewel Williams Johnson, David Imamor, David Tubiolo, Jose Alvarado, Tyree Woodson Samuels, Emiliana Ulai, Anant Nambiar, Jen Pooja, Colin Smith, and me.
Okay, and
14 members out of 17.
you say 2% would be the maximum
Yes,
for 1 year or
for 1 year.
What about 2 years?
We did not discuss 2 years, so I can't speak on behalf of that, but we did come to the agreement that for 1 year, 2%. Maybe in a future meeting, we can come back and give you that number, but I don't want to go on record and speak for them without having their approval.
Anybody else? Yes, Ms. Stewart.
First and foremost, thank you for coming and thank you for speaking on behalf of the people who are not here to speak on their own behalf. I know my colleague, Mr. Withers, is new to this board, so he has not had the number of years of experience that I've had or that you've had in terms of coming to meetings, nor has, obviously, he had the conversations that some of us may have had with tenants when we try to get them to come out. There are any number of legitimate reasons why people find it difficult to show up, whether it's working, caretaking. Sometimes it's that people are ashamed of the fact that their circumstances are as desperate as they are. And it's very hard to come out and speak to strangers about the fact that you can't afford to take your medication every day and that you're skipping meals so that your kids can eat and that you only have $50 left after you finish paying your rent to get through to the end of the month. So forgive me if I feel offended at the fact, Mr. Withers, that you don't understand what it's like to be on the other side. I am not saying that owners do not have a right to collect rent, nor am I saying that they don't have a right to make a profit on their properties. But if you actually take the time, please take the time to go out and listen to tenants and to listen empathetically to what circumstances people are living with, because it sounds to me like the legislator, she's listened to her constituents. They've trusted her enough to be willing to come and bare their souls about really difficult circumstances. And they probably have done it because she's been empathetic. You have not come across somebody who would be very empathetic if people were to try to come and talk to you about the difficulties they're having and why they can't afford to pay any more than they're paying. So I just felt the need to thank you for speaking for the folks who aren't here and to encourage you not to draw conclusions about the people who aren't here, that somehow it means that they don't care.
Please don't.
Because that's not in fact.
Mr. Smith wants to say something.
I agree 300% with everything you said. One of the things I want to thank both of our county legislators, and I believe will make a presentation. They are more in contact with the constituency than we are, because they represent them. They walk the streets, they hear. I hear because I'm building affordable housing. I know what it's like. And I would say to you that we have had tenants last year, the health service why down here, and we had tenants in New Rochelle. You know, so I'm appalled that you would say because you don't have 15 or 20 tenants here that don't care. I was gonna say something else, but I'll leave that alone. It's the same old story, that when it comes to people who don't have the income or people who are not in certain situations, that they get degraded like that. People care. People care. And it's up our responsibility to see how we can raise them, that we can provide the opportunity for them to strengthen the communities in which they live. I want to thank you, Madam Williams, and I know that I want to thank your colleague who's about to come before us. And this is not their first time. They were here last year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Next person I'm going to call is Tommy Rabica.
Forgive me, I wasn't quite prepared. I didn't think I was coming up yet. Good evening.
Do you need more time? I can call somebody else.
No, I'm happy to speak with you now. Thank you for asking. I'm here representing an organization. Thank you both for being in the room. I appreciate it. I know we've met once before, Ms. Williams. You'll hear my testimony in a couple of minutes. I'm more than willing to continue to meet. Forgive me. Good evening. Thank you for your service. My name is Howie Ravikoff. My family owns a 29-unit apartment building in the village of Worcester, and I'm here tonight to tell you most of the things remain the same as they have in years past. Thank you for the tweet. Many of the folks in the room, we're independent property owners. We are not those faceless conglomerates of New York City. I care about my tenants. I care about the unit they live in. I certainly care about my building and the community where all of this takes place, Village of Worcester. That's specifically the community I'm referring to. Those things haven't changed. I've been here before. I believe all those things are true statements over a long period of time. But as you know, as you've heard, there's a lot that has changed. Forgive me. I still have a roof that should be completely replaced, but it doesn't pay to make that investment, so I keep patching it. I still have an elevator that is long past its useful life, but replacing it or even replacing some of its major systems doesn't make economic sense. I know we've talked about the difference between a guideline and a major capital improvement. Forgive me, I'm getting to all of it. Those things haven't changed. That's the problem. Nothing has changed, except everything has gotten worse. I get it. My building is a year older. I have patches on top of patches. The elevator is out more frequently, and my elderly tenants on upper floors complain more about it. The insurance is more expensive. We've heard that from multiple people. Reduced coverage. We're all familiar with it. This past winter, in addition to having an increased fuel rate, was brutal. We just burned more fuel than we would normally burn. Plain and simple. We hear the same story from the tenants. I did, at least. I have tenants, I speak to them. I was in New Rochelle. I heard them speak in New Rochelle. I've been here before. I've heard them speak in years past. I hear things the tenant reps more than others are saying this year more than others. I hear affordable housing and new development isn't affordable. I hear minimum wage isn't a living wage. I stand before you tonight. I pledge to stand with my tenants, with all tenants, with tenant reps, to knock on our representative doors, to take meetings, to look for creative solutions to these underlying problems. I hear it, I get it, I think we all get it. I'm more than happy to stand before boards and talk to boards. I understand this board may not be the board to solve the larger problems. This board has really one tool, and that tool is narrow and it's specific, and you know what I'm talking about. It's the rent guideline. I'm here tonight to ask for a rent guideline. I'd love you to solve all the other problems. I know you can. We heard a lot of that in Michelle. The HCR provided you with information about ETPA regulated buildings here in Westchester. You've heard it, I just want to repeat it. ETPA regulated buildings in Westchester. They told you the cost to operate these buildings last year went up from the year before, talking about past tense. Those costs went up 4.2%. That's my request tonight, for you to give us a guideline moving forward based on costs from the past, 4.2% for a one-year renewal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Radcliffe, can you please tell me what the difference between 2% and 4.2 would mean to you?
Well, again, we're talking about costs that already happened.
I know that.
And we didn't touch on, I will answer your question specifically, but we didn't touch on the rate of inflation, which is higher than 4.2% according to the HCR report that you folks received. If I remember correctly, it's 4.6. So 2% adds something to the bucket. It doesn't add everything that was already removed from the bucket. It helps, but it's still year over year from the past and moving forward, reducing and reducing and reducing. And I think that's the idea that we're hoping you folks hear tonight. Since 2019, mostly, we've been reducing and taking away and not doing things. And we're asking to try to keep up from what was already expended, 4.2%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
I have a question. I have a question, Mr. Radcliffe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. What about major capital improvements? Do you have enough monies to have a major capital improvement, or is there any limitation to you?
Thank you for the question. I don't, Mr. Finger. I would love to have capital reserves to replace my entire roof. I would love to have capital reserves to replace either half of the elevator system or the entire elevator system. Those are two regular issues we have in our building that I would love to have the capital funds to replace. Or if I didn't have all the money in my pocket to do those things, I'd love to be able to say I have the cash flow to afford the debt to do those things. Does that make sense to you, sir?
Thank you, yes. How about individual apartment improvements when a long-term tenant moves out? Do you have the funds for that?
Thank you, Mr. Finger. It's the same answer, really. The economics don't make sense to renovate an apartment that's been occupied for an extended period of time that needs a gut renovation of the kitchen, of the bathroom, of all the living spaces. The return on investment isn't.
Thank you.
And just to repeat what Mr. Finger asked earlier, is I don't have the money in my pocket to do it. I'd love to have the capital funds to do it, and I don't have the cash flow to afford basically the monthly payment if I were to get the debt to do it. We're looking at that right now for 4 units that we believe will come vacant in the next 30, 60, and 90 days, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure what we're gonna do with them.
Thank you, Mr. Radikoff.
Person in my list is Mackenzie Forsberg.
Good evening.
Are you representing yourself or an institution?
An organization.
An organization, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak. My name is Mackenzie Forsberg, and I am a member of the BRI's Apartment Owner Advisory Council. My day-to-day, I've worked at a property management company in the Bronx that manages several quality, affordable ETPA. In Bronx, we call it rent stabilized. Here, we call it ETPA properties for over 24 years. Yes, I was 17. Many of the attendees tonight are here because of a misconception that all affordable housing is new development and shiny and glossy. And all they know are the stories from decades ago about the big bad landlord stigma, and that housing is always a conflict, landlord versus tenant. Kind of like Tom and Jerry, the cartoons that were always adversaries. I want to start off with clarifying that if you're in this room thinking that we're all talking about that type of housing, or that archaic adversarial relationship between housing providers and tenants, or because all you know about tonight is that you saw a flyer on Instagram that your rent might increase, I'm sorry, but I think you're in the wrong room at the wrong party. And very respectfully to Ms. Shanae Williams, I've lived in Yonkers for, I want to say, almost 20 years now. Everything that I'm very excited about to see you advocate for us in the fall is a different part of DHR rent regulation. So although I support and appreciate everything in the fall, it's not a part of what we're here to talk about tonight with lease renewal increases on the Rent Guidelines Board. Or market rate units, which we're talking about, the rent is too high. Those are market rate units. We're talking about rent stabilized units. That's a pinata for another party. Not all affordable housing discussions pertain to this specific type of housing, and the old stigma of the bad landlord is really as good as that cartoon cat and mouse. I know this because I've lived and breathed it since I was 17. This has been my entire life's work. This type of housing isn't the sexy Wall Street investor housing. It's the immigrant-owned and family-operated pre-war apartment building housing that's affordable because of rent stabilization. Except there aren't any sweetheart tax credit deals that politicians make. We pay those in full. Thank you very much. Yes, so scratch that. I'm a Bronx girl, born and raised, and my business continues to live there, 3rd Avenue, every single day. And I live here in Westchester. Having been on both sides, having been a rent stabilized tenant for many, many years, and also managing rent stabilized housing for so long, I see both sides, and trust me, I get why there are so many misconceptions. But I'm here tonight because after so many years with such minor annual increases, and we're talking about this year, which I get, but this is compounded, as everyone has been saying, over the past several years. And that's why we're so animated and passionate about this. Among so many other detrimental DHCR policies, like the HSTPA in 2019, we are the breaking point. And I get it, not many people in this room think that this industry is a we. But unfortunately, we're in this together. I'm here to share that that's the reality. And whether it wants to be heard or not, those that have the most to lose are those residing in the homes that we operate. I am not the speaker that's going to cry about our income or expenses, because let's face it, if you're on this side, you don't really care, and that's fine. What you do and should care about is what this percentage vote means for the quality and safety of your apartment building that you live in and your apartment. Your elevator working, your roof leaking, your boiler giving heat. This is what the rent guidelines increases on this vote really boil down to. And without reasonable, responsible economics being voted on for so many years now, with no reserves left, as we had when these laws first changed, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, the math isn't mathing, the safety isn't safetying, and the quality is not qualitying. Ultimately, who suffers? those who are actually living in the apartments that voted on restricting the dollar amounts needed to repair, maintain, and improve this housing. Come on, you get where I'm going with this. I'm standing here speaking in front of you at the Westchester RGB hearing, but almost all the property that I work with is in the Bronx in New York City. I have one tiny property that I manage here in Westchester. I have the smallest dog in this fight, and although that might sound crazy, that's how much I care, and that's why I'm here. I'm here with you tonight, dedicating my own personal time when I could be at my daughter's game or at a PTA meeting at the school, because I see for the past 24 years what happens when we don't get the bare basics that we need just to operate in our daily expenses. When housing providers are limited in what they can provide and what a Band-Aid on a roof looks like versus replacing the entire roof. As Howie had mentioned earlier, that Band-Aid, you keep putting on the Band-Aid, but there's only so long. The people that provide and operate this housing, not the Patagonia bros on Wall Street, the family businesses you see here, our philosophy is always to reinvest. If we're going to talk statistics, Con Edison rates have increased by 10% plus in the past 5 years. Grocery bills last 2 years by 8 to 10%. Gasoline this year alone has gone up just this year, 40%.
The time is up.
Why not use that on housing? Voting for zero on the roof over your head. That's where we want to spend the least in a housing crisis when we have the housing. It's more than just building, it's preserving.
Okay, your
thank
time
you.
is up, yeah. If you want to continue, maybe you want to ask her a question?
Please continue.
No, I cut out a lot of it, really. It's just what Howie had mentioned earlier with the difference between capital improvements and the rent increases on rent lease renewals. Capital improvements, just talking more statistics, DHCR's own statistics. It's called an MCI application when we're putting capital for the replacement of the big systems. They've decreased in recent years since these laws have changed and we've been getting nominal increases by 75%. We know what it's like and the process is. We're talking small, regulated, equitable rent increases, and that's been wiped out. So, you know, and the cost of financing. Again, I'm not talking about our costs. I get it. Nobody cares. I'm talking about just preserving the quality of the housing that we have. Again, the housing crisis, it's a crisis where we can't bifurcate the industry where developers get the tax credits and they're rent regulated, but here, you know, again, this is only going to be solved with us working together. And that's it.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Wu.
Well, you asked me for 1 and 2 year renewals.
Our expenses have gone up so much. I feel like it would be arbitrary. I guess the 4.2% that is shown by the statistics and what this board is here to discuss is it's backed by statistics on the HCR side. So that is what I think we reasonably can request. I respect what you're saying about the 2%. That's a number that comes out of nowhere. It's not statistically based. This is statistically based and we've got data showing even more, but I think it's reasonable. And I think it's supported by the statistics for the 4.2%.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And again, I offer myself as well to anyone, meetings, you know, I'm here, especially younger.
Next person, video process. Hello. Yes, can you please give it to the listener? Yes.
I am here to speak on behalf of today's builders.
You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Dear members of the Rent Guidelines Board and the public, my name is Brigitte Rocha and I work for the Rosa Builders, a family-owned and operated company for the past 24 years. I am here to share the reality of the rising costs associated with operating residential properties. From 2024 to 2025 alone, our electric and gas bills increased by 32%. Repairs and maintenance charges rose by 50% due to the surging cost of our contractors faced for materials, labor, insurance, and fuel. Furthermore, our insurance premiums increased by 21.5%, even as our liability coverage reduced by 75%. To qualify for coverage, our current carrier required us to update each individual apartment's electrical sub-panel. At approximately $2,000 per panel, the $100,000 total for 50 replacement was a mandatory expense to remain insured. Before starting my testimony, I distributed before and after photos of a rent-stabilized 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom for your review that I would like to discuss. The previous resident left the premises in poor condition, requiring the removal of garbage, food, and abandoned belongings. Additionally, there is an outstanding balance of over $30,000 in unpaid rent covering 2 years of occupancy. We invested over $31,000 to fully renovate the apartment. This total includes only the expenses permitted for calculating the legal rent under the HSTPA. It excludes painting costs and the $3,800 fee that we paid to remove everything they left behind. After applying the 2% increase and the 1/156 renovation allowance, the new legal rent is $14.5160. Yes, $14.6160. This remains significantly below the average legal rent of $16.76 reported in the HCR survey results. Please note that we will also incur an administrative fee of $313 when we submit the IEI to HCR, which includes before and after pictures, invoices, cancel checks, and of all the expenses. So we invest all this, and now HCR says, now you have to pay $313 to file this. These operational costs have far outpaced the 2% and 3% rent increase approved last year. Additionally, HSTPA regulations have made it increasingly difficult and cost ineffective to renovate vacant units. With banks hesitant to lend to owners of rent-stabilized buildings, property owners are left with no resources. Property owners provide essential housing and employment for superintendents and demand administrative staff just like me, while supporting local small businesses and contractors. Without adequate rental income, owners cannot cover utilities, taxes, or insurance, nor can they properly maintain their buildings. Consistently low rents increase negatively impact housing quality and deplete the market. The Rent Guideline Board must consider these economic factors to ensure fair decisions. Based on the HCR survey's finding, I recommend a 4.2 rent increase for 1-year lease renewals. I urge this board to be visionary and consider these economic realities to ensure the long-term stability of Westchester's stabilized housing market. The past is in the past. You can make a difference starting now. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Is this, yeah, I do have one. Is this unusual? I mean, to the extent that this apartment is
No,
left.
actually, that's just an example.
So this happens often.
Unfortunately, yes. And this tenant actually was very not nice.
It was a not nice tenant.
He called me names, very inappropriate names.
Anybody else? No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to call Emiliana Ulay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening, Emiliana Ulay.
Yes.
Thank you. Nice to see you all again, right back here. Well, I think it's the last time we met in a couple of different other cities. So I serve as a Westchester County legislator. I represent District 9 in Northern Westchester. That's Croton, Portland, Ossining, Briarcliff, Buchanan area.
And I'm here speaking on behalf of myself and my district and the 13 other legislators who signed on to a letter that Majority Whip Shanae Williams and I led, advocating for tenants throughout Westchester County. 3 out of 4 of the legislators that represent the city of Yonkers that we're in right now signed on to that letter. That letter asks for no more than a 2% increase for 1-year leases. We did stay silent on the question about 2-year leases. Last year, you decided on 3% for 2-year leases. We felt that was reasonable, but the 1-year ask that we are making is 2%. The fact is that the situation from last year to this year in terms of what is affecting tenants has only gotten worse, right? Vacancy rates still at historic lows. These numbers are coming from resources that we all trust, right? These are not made up numbers. These are facts and statistics. Historically low vacancy rates that leave tenants with no option but to either take whatever increase the landlord is proposing or leave the region entirely. All of the cost of living numbers that landlords are pointing to that are increasing their costs are also increasing the cost for tenants to live, right? You talk about gas prices. Now, those same gas price costs are being felt by tenants who have to get to work every day. Healthcare costs going up, especially because of the loss of federal subsidies. Energy bills going up. It's felt by the landlord. It's also felt by the tenant. So the situation has not improved. And in some ways, it's only gotten worse as well. Westchester County continues to be an incredibly attractive place to live. People love living here. They want to live here. We're really blessed because we have New York City in our front yard and the gorgeous green Hudson Valley in our backyard. We are right now at a historic population size for Westchester County. We had the highest growth rate in 1 year of any county in New York State in population size. Although we're really proud of that as Westchester County legislators, what it actually means is that there's more pressure on the housing market when it comes to demand. So there's the prices just keep going up. So when we talk about market rate housing, of course, market rate housing is going up higher because the pressure is going up. People desperately want to live here. If you listen closely to what the landlords are saying, they're not saying they're not making a profit. They're just saying their profit is slim.
They're not making a profit. That's exactly what we're saying.
Show it to me in the landlords in default. If it's not showing up in those numbers, then it's just a threat. Forgive me. Yes, well, if they want to comment, I will respond. So if they are, again, if you listen closely, they're complaining that the profits are not large enough. I'm here to say that if they wanted exorbitant profits, this is not the business to be in. ETPA housing is not the business to be in if you are looking to run a business with exorbitant profits. Here, we're trying to protect housing stock for the populations that are more at risk in Westchester County. So your profits are going to be very, very slim. They keep threatening that they might be forced to sell because profit margins, again, are so slim. They're going to be forced to sell and get out of this business, and they're going to be selling to those private equity, large corporations that will buy up their properties that aren't making high enough profits for them. Why would those private equity companies buy their properties if it wasn't making a profit? What that again is saying is that yes, the profit margins on these properties are small. They're supposed to be. We're trying to protect them for tenants. And large corporations are able to absorb those costs because it's a smaller portion of their portfolio. So they're able to operate with smaller margins because these properties are a smaller portion of their portfolios. So while landlords are asking you to please give them a higher percentage because they need bigger profits, tenants are begging you to please do not increase their rents because you're going to drive them out of the region entirely or put the fact that they have a roof over their head in danger entirely. Those are the two things that you're being asked to weigh. Give them higher profits or protect tenants, make sure they have a home and they can stay in the region.
And you heard it from them, even though they're talking about the fact that the increases don't allow them to make home improvements. They said the quiet part out loud. Even if you give them the 4.2%, they're not making capital improvements. She said it herself.
It's an operating budget.
Actually, your time is up, and please, no participation from the audience. Your time is up with you. I'm asking you to finish.
Yes, it is very sad to not see any tenants in the room tonight. That full blame goes to HCR, who's done a terrible job with outreach. I'm very sorry you two are the representatives of HCR in the room tonight. I personally reached out to them to be put on their email list, to be notified of all of the Red Guidelines Board notices. And I had to reach out again this year because I never got a notice. And they said they switched email systems, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what's going on there, but you're doing a terrible job reaching out to tenants. I agree, right? And tenants don't have lobbyists who can organize them and bring them here. There's a reason why they're all asking for the same number. There's a lobbyist who's coordinated them and asked them to come here. Tenants don't have a lobbyist. Tenants are working 3 jobs to try to make ends meet.
Any questions? Any other questions? Thank you. Oh.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you for coming up and once again for speaking on behalf of the tenants who are not here. We appreciate the fact that our legislators are listening to all of your constituents. And yes, clearly you're listening to the ones that are here, but you also have conversations with the ones who are not here. And thank you for reminding people that last year, even after this board raised rents 2% and 3%, all of the reporting was that it wasn't enough, and there wasn't a whole lot of thanks to the board from the landlords about the increases, but the tenants struggled in order to try to pay them. So thank you for listening to all of your constituents. I know it's a difficult decision. There aren't any winners, but the people, I don't know where they expect tenants to actually make up this money, how many more jobs they expect them to have. So thank you for at least speaking and making them aware of what I know I hear all the time.
Thank you for pointing out that we are listening to them as well. That's why we put, as Majority Whip Shanae Williams pointed out, 10 million in last year's county budget to help them with repairs, straight grants, to help them with capital improvements repairs that they are saying they don't have enough in the profits to be able to do.
Which converts.
We didn't put 10 million to help, we didn't put an additional 10 million to help tenants with their rents, just to be clear. We put 10 million in the budget to help landlords with capital repairs. And also, every time a tenant pays rent, let's never forget, they are building equity for the landlord in that property, right? That is part of the profit that they have, that they're making every year, is the equity that they build on the property every time a tenant pays rent and they pay their mortgage. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, what?
Next person on my list is Alan Zareski.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak.
Are you representing yourself or
The organization, BRI and
you
AF.
have 5 minutes?
Thank you. I want to thank the board for its thankless job. No matter what you do, you're wrong. Which is a tough position to be in. You are also the last bastion to hear everything, because the problem is not just with the increases. The problem is with the legislation that puts unreasonable expectations and regulations and costs on landlords. It is with the courts that do not enforce the law, do not even allow the minimum 5% or $50, whichever is less, late fees that's mandated under the 2019 Tenant Protection Act to be included in any eviction proceedings for non-payment. Those evictions for non-payment are based solely on either not paying the rent or on tenants terrorizing other tenants, because there is no incentive for landlords to try and get any tenant out of an apartment, because you can't get an increase anyway. So the problem is much bigger. However, you have a limited means of addressing this. I want to thank she's gone, Miss Williams, the other young lady, for speaking. I believe that they mean well. I believe that the landlords are not asking for a 4.2 or more increase to make capital improvements. But we're stating that with the cost of inflation, with everything that's gone on, that's what is necessary to simply stand still and be in the same place. You've already been presented with statistics and figures and charts detailing the necessity for a reasonable increase in the upcoming ETP guideline resolution. I want to talk about the eye test and realities and necessity of a reasonable set of increase. Nobody needs any charts or schedules to know that the cost of everything is going up. Why is it that landlords are deemed to be immune from that increase? Why is it that it's the landlord's responsibility to bear the brunt, if not all, of that burden? Con Edison was just granted at the last Service Commission hearing, double-digit increases. I understand from what was testified here that that's been rolled back a little bit. I don't think I've seen that. But that was just for the cost of the service. The delivery charges are more than what the cost of electricity is or gas is. Tenants are seeing that. They're seeing it in hundreds of dollars in their bills. Landlords are seeing it in thousands and tens of thousands of dollars in their bills. And I know that everybody who has tried to deal with Con Edison, you cannot deal with them. I have my own horror stories with them. They just don't listen. They don't bill properly. And they come back and rebill up to a year or 2 years after the fact. So even the numbers that we're providing you with as our costs are fallacious because Con Ed can't read their own meters and arbitrarily changes things. It's a problem. State and local municipalities keep enacting more laws and regulations that if you can even comply with them, if they're complete and you can follow their regulations, add more costs to just make it more difficult. In fact, the state, I believe, was just passed about lead paint in Yonkers, certain buildings. That's going to cost about $1,000 an apartment a month to do the testing that they want. Where's it supposed to come from? And as we testified, insurance costs, if you can get it, are just outrageous. New York State, again, based on the laws and regulations, there's only a handful of companies that will write in New York State. And that limits things even more. All the above is compounded by other factors, okay? In fact, municipalities are now taking the same position at Con Ed that they can go back and rebuild. I just had a situation in a building, small building, where Yonkers decided that they'd been billing me wrong for the last 50 years. And my water bill, which was $8,500 approximately, give or take, they're now telling me it's $62,000. This after replacing the water meter 3 years ago, and them telling me my bill was $350,000 because the smart meter was stupid, was picking up everybody's information on things. It's just, we're fighting it, but it costs money and it costs time. Additionally, under the law, landlords must accept tenants who are assisted by programs like Section 8, which is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. However, each of the agencies that implement these things talk about now they have their own protocol and their own procedures, which are in contradiction to New York State law and ETPA law, and they don't care. And you got to fight with them just to get the increases and the payments, forget increases, the payments that you're entitled to.
Your time is up.
My problem is that you guys are the last bastion. The landlords are asking not for increased revenue, we're asking after years of not keeping pace for a reasonable increase to keep our heads above water. All of these landlords have vested interests in their buildings. They're not big entities. When you call them, I'm sure that most of these tenants like me, all landlords like me, know all their tenants by name and help them out and try and work things through with them. I'm gonna have to sell a building because it just doesn't economically make sense anymore. It happens to be a building my father built. I worked on it. It's my namesake. I'm gonna have to sell it. Why? Because I refuse to be a bad landlord, which is what you're gonna make me do. I don't want to do that. Thank you very much.
Got a question for you. Yes, I do. That building that you're just talking about in regards to the one that you call the building. Where is it?
Yonkers,
How many units?
137,
How many of those are ETPA?
all of them,
When was the last time you turned a profit on them?
5 years ago.
Would you say that the value of that building has dropped precipitously?
Considerably. That's one of the reasons why my mortgage is coming due. I'm not gonna be able to afford to do it. I can't go to my partners who are elderly family members, just, and ask them for money they don't have.
To say that you're building equity in it would be a ridiculous statement.
In today's market, it does not build equity. No.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you all for your
Thank you.
time.
I'm going to call, Sol Rosario. Mr. Rosario, are you representing yourself or?
Myself.
You have
Myself.
3 minutes.
Is it on? Can you hear me?
I think it is.
Hi, good evening. I believe I was here about 3 years ago, the last time I spoke. And at that time I was referring to a situation in my building. That year you provided a 1% increase that based on my total rent that represented 1,980. Let's say with my rent that started in January, throughout the whole year, that increased me 1,980. So going back on those numbers, now I'm going back to what I reflected on the expenses that I have on the major expenses. And I'm just talking about fuel, light and power, water, insurance, and taxes. So when you were generous and gave us 2.5, that increase generated $4,900 for my building for that year. Now, that $4,900 was good enough for me to sustain the increase on fuel for 2,700. Light and power went up by $586. My insurance went up by $1,776, and my insurance $1,525. Taxes only $562. Altogether, those 5 fixed expenses, $7,149 went up. You gave me $4,900. I was short $2,249. I haven't even changed our light bulb. Or gave my worker a soda or even a raise. Let's talk about that later. Going back now to the 2% that you provided to me last year, that increased by 3,960. Now with that 3,960, the expenses from last year, in which already had a shortfall for about 2,249 for the year. Now I have my fuel went up by 3,508, light and power 3,244. Insurance, because you have so many high increases before, I kind of feel that I slowed down a little bit, 723. Water and sewer, 1,742. And the taxes, 936. Altogether, my increases went up by 10,153, and you gave me 3,960. So I have a shortfall of 6,193. Now, if we so nicely offer the 4.2 that you give me, that we are kind of asking, that would be 8,313, which is still lower than the 10,000 that I went up. I'm a product of the same community that all of us tend to have come. I did public school, public college, rent-regulated housing. My mom lives on rent-regulated housing. I believe Shania said why landlords don't work with tenants. Well, my mom's landlord did work. I know him. He hasn't been the landlord because my mom has been there since 1987. He's not the landlord forever, but he's there maybe 10 years. He was kind enough for let me and try to do some of the things. I learned how to do some of the things on my own and so workers. I was able to fix my mom's apartment, which is decaying, and he has no way or incentive to try to fix it. My mom paid $1,100 in that apartment. To me, I think that's very unaffordable for the landlord to maintain and go and do an expenses. So I fix, I paint with some of my leftover materials, with whatever I had to do to make my life for my mom better.
we do try to work with people. It is not sustainable for every year for me to try to scramble, I say my money went to school, me and my wife work. We want this to be a successful business. I don't have to be rich, but I'm working hard to make it so we could afford to have the retirement. I could have invested in the stock market. I thought it was the better idea. I work with people. I love my people. And I am not making enough. This is not going to be sustainable long-term for people like me.
Yeah, Mr.
It's
Rosario,
impossible.
your time is up. Your presentation is very compelling. If you want to wrap up quickly.
All I'm saying, it sounds that it is bad and we all pay. And I believe everybody's paying all the money that they have to pay. But at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. We have to be able to afford it. I cannot go to Connection or the store and say, hey, I need a cut. I can't. I don't get it. I just want enough money to at least stay here until see what happens in the future. And that 4.2, even though it sounds like, oh, it's a lot, it will not make me whole in at least to maintaining what it is. I gotta keep being creative and doing stuff with my own hand as much as I can. I can only afford to be in so many places myself. I cannot spend all this time fixing things on my own. It's not helping out.
Thank you.
I-
Women,
I'd like to say something. I just want to say that your story is very inspirational. I wish you the best of luck with your building. I hope that you get to keep.
anybody?
Thank you, Mr. Sarver. How many units do you have?
It's a self-family.
Oh, 7 family, okay.
I'm sorry, if somebody have 1 second, I forgot one thing. Unfortunately, one of my tenants, had an episode mental. He had a bad situation in his life and he arrested and so on, so his family lost the sole breadwinner. I have to sit down with that lady and explain to her, say, listen, you're going to go through a rough process and somebody that I said, this is what's gonna happen to you. I will have to take you to court because you don't have enough money for you to pay. And if I don't take you to court, the state will not help you. Long and behold, I had to go through that. I put it through, gave her the help, like the guidance who to meet. She ended up being assisted with the rent, basically for what she owed behind until the husband came back and they started showing paying the rent. But guess what? My nice help to her costed me $2,000 to get the lawyer to start the process, which without that process started, the city or whoever was going to give her the help would have never come through. Because if you're not desperate for anything, they don't help you. So I'm $2,000 down and helping somebody stay at her home. And whether I wanted to stay here or not, I had to do it. And it came out of basically, I'm down $2,000 on that situation by itself. So that's what I said, no raises, no nothing. I'm not even talking about anything but fixed expenses. 4,000 something might not still cover my expense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Marcola? Mr. Marcola, you representing yourself or?
Organization, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your service. Thank you very much for being here, for taking the time. I'm a small property owner, and I'm going to start from a slightly different angle. I've been at these meetings every year. Some years I talk, some years I don't talk. I think the air is a little mixed up. I think there's a feeling that tenants are against landlords, landlords are against tenants, and so forth. Let me start by saying I'm an immigrant myself. I grew up in a country that no longer exists. I'm a war refugee. And I came to this country with absolutely nothing. Worked very hard and managed to become a landlord. So I'm very thankful to this country. And I know all my tenants by first name. In the past, we had somebody else manage our properties because the numbers are so low. We could not make a profit. We had to let those people go. So now I'm the super, I'm the property manager. I'm the guy that gets a phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning when something needs to be done. There's a lot of conversation about expenses. Just number-wise, our insurance in the last 5 or 6 years has gone up from about 6,000 to over 26,000. In simple math, that's over 400%. And I assure you, the rent guideline board annual increases have now been close to a fraction of that number. Taxes, we were talking about taxes earlier. Not going to put the legislature in the spot, but the county is increased by 3.75. City of Yonkers overrode their limit to 4.75 or so. So we know expenses are going through a roof. Our Con Ed bill, previous years it was up by over 10% or so. And like the gentleman pointed out, years after, Connor came after saying, oh, we made a mistake in how we billed you. So we're stuck with a $40-something thousand bill that we had to pay over time. A question came up earlier, do we talk to tenants? Absolutely. Whenever we're in difficult times, so we ask our tenants to share, and one of the answers that once they got was, well, Mayor de Blasio said, don't pay the rent, so not that I'm not gonna help you, I'm thinking of not paying the rent. So I have to remind that Mayor de Blasio is no longer the mayor, and he was not in the city, so rent is actually due. I have lent money to my tenants, I brought food to my tenants, I've forgiven rent to my tenants when they fell in hard times and could not pay the rent, that deaths in family, diseases and whatnot. You asked the question earlier whether or not warehouse apartments, we actually had to do. We had a tenant who was in the unit over 20-something years. Economically, did not make sense for us to put the money in and bring back the market. It happens to be on a low floor when there's a demand for low floor units. We actually just took $30,000 for our own money. You asked that question earlier, from our own pocket, put it in the building. We don't expect to get that money back. Your increases, because just numbers don't add up, but out of compassion, because we know there's elderly people out there that cannot find an elevator building or cannot walk the stairs, so we took our money and put it back in the building. I took the second job, my wife took the second job, so I guess if the numbers are not there, 4% to 5% or whatever makes sense to put into perspective, we'll have to take the third job. Let me also talk about a couple of my tenants. I have a tenant who pays me $890 a month. 3 working adults in the apartment. Now, if we assume they make $20 an hour, which they probably make more, at an annual wage of $41,600, for the 3 of them, it's $124,000. Their rent right now is about 8.5% of their income. If we were to ask 4% increase, that boils down to about $1.18 a day for the tenant. You're asking landlords to take the brunt of the housing crisis, and we have been doing it for years, and we'll be doing it for years for sure. I don't want to speak for other landlords, but I'm sure I will be doing it for years. I have a tenant who pays me $650 a month in a 2-bedroom. There's 4 adults in there. Same math. If they make minimum $20 per hour, their income is going to be $166,400 a year. At $650 a month, that's rent is 4.68% of annual income. In terms of, if you increase the rent just only by 4%, you'll be paying 86 cents more per day. Is it fair to ask the landlords to chip in more? Absolutely. Is it fair to ask the tenants to help us a little bit as well? Because it is their house and we want them to live in good condition. There's a reason why they have my cell phone. I'm not hiding from them. I want to help them. Now, I'll digress for a second. I have friends who work for 32 BJ in the city, and they're having a very hard time finding seasonal workers. Nobody wants to work. Let me bore you with the stat. Unemployment rate in the country is 4.3%. 1 in 3 adults in the US are not working, which is the lowest number in 20 years. So just to digest that number. Buildings in Manhattan cannot find relief workers for the summer because people don't want to work. There's people that need help, and we as landlords are there to help them, but we actually need help too.
Your time is up, and we have 8 minutes until we are thrown out of here. I'm going to continue calling until we are told to go, right? We can do that?
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna do it, but we can try that
I have a
approach.
question for you. The building that you're talking about, how many units?
12.
12 units, and do you have a mortgage on the property?
Absolutely. And the mortgage went from 3.5% to 7% interest rate.
Okay, and on that building, would you say that it has turned a profit in the last 5 years?
No, absolutely not.
Not even close.
We just had to pull in 30,000 to put in there, so that's again out of compassion because we knew people need a lower floor apartment. There's no way we're getting the money back anytime soon.
Got it. So to say that you're building equity in the property is.
Remove from reality the facts of what it is out there.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person is Jazz.
He's not here.
Okay. Alexandra Lawrence.
Oh, yeah.
Hi,
Hi. You represented.
I'm representing myself and my mom.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for
evening.
having me speak. My name is Alexandra Lawrence. You can call me Alex. We own 3 buildings in White Plains, totaling 87 units. We know many of our tenants very well. They all have our numbers. We're invited to their baby showers. In fact, we have one coming up in a few weeks. The legislature, I don't know who. Yeah, she left, but I just have to say that landlords own private businesses, especially the landlords here, and they're deserving of making a profit just as anyone else that owns their own business. So to say that they're making, to judge how much profit they're making is not up to the woman who was here, in my opinion. And then to touch on a point that another man said, we are also considering selling the unit, one of the apartment buildings that we own, because it has not made a profit in many, many years. And I'm sure whoever buys it will not keep it as an affordable housing unit. They will just hold on to it and be some sort of private equity company that in 10 years knocks it down or builds market rate housing. So many of our residents have lived in the 3 buildings for decades, some since the 1970s. About a dozen of them receive Section 8 assistance. My mom and I take pride in providing safe, quality housing, and we try to maintain the buildings in a fashion where we would want to live in them. In fact, my dad lived in one of the units for many years. So we have a really good relationship with our tenants. And as both everyone tonight has highlighted, all of the costs for everyone is gone. But just to highlight some of our increases, our insurance has gone up about 25%, even though we reduced our liability from 5 million to 1 million. Heating costs have risen at least 20%, electricity at least 20%. In 2024, we were required to upgrade our electrical, which cost $75,000. And these are not, optional expenses. And they're necessary to keep the building safe, functional, and compliant. I could even talk about repointing the buildings, which we are in need of doing, but it will cost nearly $1 million to repoint all 3 buildings, and that is money we do not have. So I think the board's responsibility is to ensure that rent-stabilized housing remains both affordable for tenants and financially sustainable for landlords. And I know the 2019 changes are not in your purview, but I think that's really hurt the landlords. And I think we need to increase rent so that we can offset all the other rising costs. And I know we're running out of time in case someone else wants to speak.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. Nick, Beck,
Oh, I think he just left, actually.
and Mr. Nelson?
Thank you. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, I'm just speaking Mount Vernon, but there are a couple of things that were said that I think I have to respond to. Unfortunately, our colleagues from our elected officials left because it seems to me disingenuous that they can pass an increase in taxes of, they said 3.75. My county tax went up 5% because it wasn't just their increase, but the city of Yonkers adds what they call fees to my county tax. So it's really 5%. And the city of Yonkers just passed a budget that's going to increase our city taxes by 4.75%, almost 5%. And to say, well, we have to raise the taxes because our costs are going up. And then they'll say, oh, but you can afford not to. And we're not talking about the kind of money that we can reinvest in building. This is the money that we're just passing along.
So all our basic single expense is taxes. And so we're just collecting it for the.
Which we installed that we have to leave.
Okay,
So-
all right, well, you got, okay, so the idea that, I thought it was terribly disingenuous that they would come here and say 2% when their own cost, it went up by 3.75 plus the taxes. And I hear what Tamara says, Stewart is saying, about the people and the tenants. Some people are suffering. And we, all of us as a society, have a responsibility to those people, the people that need it the most. And I have, you know, and so we have, I just want to say, we have programs. I have Section 8 tenants. I have tenants that are with cluster who have mental disabilities. And so we're doing part of that. But I also have tenants that are rent regulated tenants that have been there for a long time. They don't pay a lot of rent, and some of them have 3 cars, and they're living the life. In addition to that, the last time they changed the laws, there used to be a high income. If people had too much income, they couldn't have regulated apartment, it would be regulated. They took that out, so you can earn $1 million and sit in a rent regulated apartment that has 6 rooms for $1,000, and it's allowed. Before, at least they put a limitation. So I think that's disingenuous on the part of the legislature, say it's really for poor people, because not everybody in rent regulated apartments is poor. But as I say, we all have a responsibility and we all contribute to that. But there's the other side to it, that there are people that are very comfortable and that can afford to raise the rent. And the thing is, we're just, with the money that we get from the guideline, is just to keep us from sliding further into the abyss. We're at this point. The thing about investments in the building, that has to come from Albany. It's not your purview. But I'd like to also read the law that you're supposed to be enacting. And it says, look at what you're supposed to be considering is the economic condition of the residential real estate industry, which is terrible. Or you talk about building equity. The equity is negative right now. The value of the buildings is actually going down. It's not just not rising a lot, it's going down. Everybody will tell you that. The real estate taxes, this is right out of the law. Sewer and water rates, we've been talking about that. That's what we're asking for, to cover those increases for these increases that the city and the county are charging us. So that to get to the 4.5% or 4.75 or 5% for 1 year lease is that's what we're asking for. It's just to keep the building from sliding further, because things are happening in the Bronx. I just read an article where the number of fires in the Bronx is doubled in the last year in regulated apartment buildings, because they're not being invested in electrical fires. So, and the other things that talks about the insurance rates. The insurance rates are going up partly because of some of the laws that are passed by New York State. They're allowing huge claims to be filed in New York State. So the trial attorneys, you can see how many of them are advertising on the government on television, and people say, "Oh, that's to protect the people." Give me a break. They're making a bundle on it. The advertisements you see it from Morgan and Morgan and all these guys, and the laws are gotten worse. In the last budget, the governor pushed to change the laws, at least for vehicles, to reduce the kinds of things that people could claim, especially if they were part of the problem. Somebody gets in a car and gets drunk and gets in an accident, they should take part of the blame.
Thank you.
Okay, anyway, but I just wanted
Any
to,
questions for me? No.
yes. Good, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
So that's the last person on my list. And I believe that we are done with the speakers. This concludes the business of this meeting. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second? Second. Everybody in agreement? Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.